Hey everybody, I just want to talk to you about the various ways we measure the center of a data set. Because what do you even mean by the center of a data set? And there's a couple different ways that we can do this. So I'm going to show you what those are, how to measure them, and how to find them in Sheets. And a little later we'll do some Excel. But for now, just want to talk about the different methods of defining what the center is. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So here you can see we're right under the end of histograms here, or the end of skewness and descriptions in the notes. And so we have the three major measures of center: the mean, median, and mode. Mean is another word for average. So if you know how to take the average of something, that's the mean. That's it. They're synonyms. There'll actually be a third word that we use to mean the same thing a little bit later when we learn about expected value. But for now, just mean and average mean the same thing. The median is the middle number, or the average of the two middle numbers. So if you have like an even number of things in your data set, so like you have 4 things in your data set, there isn't a middle number, right? And so the median, you just average the two middle numbers and you call that thing the median. And then the mode is the most commonly occurring value. And we're only going to use mode in the case of qualitative data. There's no sense in using mode for quantitative data. We'll talk a little bit about why that is, or maybe I'll just let you think about why it doesn't really make any sense to use mode with respect to quantitative data. But for mean and median, these are both things that rely on putting the data in order or doing math with the data, which implies that the data itself has to be numbers. So they only work with quantitative data, and mode works with qualitative data, and it is the only one of these three that does. We won't usually talk about the center of qualitative data because that doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you're talking about like a typical value in a data set, that's often what the center is used to represent, and mode is the only one that works with qualitative data. So if you're talking about a typical value for qualitative data, you often use the mode. We won't do it very much. Excuse me. So mean, the average, has two different symbols, depending on whether you are talking about the average of a sample or the average of a population. And this is going to continue throughout this course, but for the population, we tend to use Greek letters. And because we're using, it's the word mean, we use a Greek M or a mu. That's this thing right here. I know it looks like a U, but it's actually a stylized M. Well, not stylized, it's Greek. And then for the sample, you might think that we would use an M, but we don't. We use an X with a bar on top of it, and that is read X bar. So we use the symbol X bar. That's how you say that. The calculations for computing them are the same. It's just that for X bar, you use the data in a sample, and for mu, you use the data in a population. That's a mean. So mean is just the average, and then we have two symbols depending on whether we're talking about a parameter or a statistic, right? Parameters have to do with the population, statistics have to do with the sample. There you go. Median is the middle number, like I said. So if your data set has an odd number of things in it, then it is you put them in order, and then the median is the one that is in the middle. That's it. If you have an even number of things in your data set, then the median is the number that divides it in half. Right? And so one way to think of the median is it's the number that, or it's the value that has 50% of the data below it and 50% of the data above it. So if you have like an infinite number of things in your data set, which we will deal with later, then the median is just whatever's right in the middle, right? It's wherever half the data is below and half the data is above. In a finite data set like we're going to be dealing with here, the median it's literally one of the numbers in the set or the average of the two middle numbers in the set. We'll see those in a bit. And the mode is the most common data value. Like I said, there's not much to explain about mode, but it does work with qualitative data, which is nice. All right, so let's see how to find these things in Sheets. It says Excel in here in the notes because I used to use Excel for the class. And you're welcome to use Excel as well, but I'm gonna use Sheets here. So let me go ahead and flip over to Sheets. All right, so what I've got here is my tree data from earlier, right? I got tree type A, tree type B. And before I do anything else, I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to kind of manipulate your sheet to make it work a little bit better. So one of the things that I want to do here, I'm going to do a few things. We're going to sort the data so that we can look at it and find what we're expecting to see and all that. But what I want to do first is I'm going to freeze my header row. So if I freeze this row here, that'll make it so that when I sort the data, it doesn't try and sort the text in with the numbers. And so you always want to do that if you're going to be manipulating your data set, then you've got a set with a header row. So what I'm going to do is I go to, I believe it's view here. Yeah, freeze one row. And when I do that, it puts a little bar here. And so now it's only dealing with, when I sort it, it's only going to be dealing with this stuff. But for right now, I'm not even going to worry about sorting it. For right now, what I'm going to do is show you how to find things or how to do commands in Excel. There's a bunch of different ways to do them. The ones we're going to be using are very typical, and so there's like a list. There's a list of commands you can choose from. I'm going to show you the more general way as well. So for instance, let's say I wanted to find the average of everything in column A. So I want to find the average of tree type A. And in fact, before I even start this, I'm going to do this statistic. Tree A, tree B. Okay. So I'm going to find the mean here. So for the mean of tree A, there's a couple ways to do it. I'll show you how to do it one way for tree A, and then I'll do a different way for tree B. So the way that I would typically do it is this. I'll show you the way that here's how I would usually do it. So there's a command, and it's average in Excel, or excuse me, in Sheets. The way you tell Sheets that you're about to put in a formula into the cell rather than just a number, right? Like you notice I didn't have to type anything special to tell it I was putting in text. It defaults to thinking that you're just going to put in some text or a number like this. If you want to put in a formula, you can put an equal sign first and then type the command you want. In this case, it's average. Now notice that when I start typing, Sheets helpfully gives me a list of things, right? So there we go. I get that average, and I would get to average here, and I can click on it, and it'll give me, there's what the command is, and it'll tell me what to put in here. It's a little hard to read if you're not used to doing programming stuff, but this is how you put this in. So what I want is the average of everything in column A here. So what I can do is I can just go grab these. It's a little slow because there's 200 of them. And it will put in the cell list that I typed in. Am I at the bottom? Oh, there it is. Right, and so the average apparently is 27.6072. Now, I don't usually do that. I usually do this. And I just type in the cells. So I want to go B2 to B201. There's 200 of these that went down to 201. I don't know if you noticed that before, but that's what I'm going to put in. So you just literally type in B2 colon that tells it to start at B2 and then end at this number. And notice that it selected all those. Like if I scroll down here, you'll see that it turned it off. That's a little annoying. Sorry, I'm a little clumsy there, and I clicked off of it. So it goes down to B201. You would have seen, had I not clicked off of it, that it just had those listed. Does it still? Oh, it does still. Okay. You can see the result here, and then the formula itself is up here. This FX stands for function. And so it's telling you like what's the function in the cell, and then you can see what the result is of that function. So it's still in there. The fact that I clicked off it didn't hurt anything. So that's how you find the average there. Now, you can also do median. So we're going to do equals its median, and then we can type in the same range, A201, right? And then it'll find the median there. So there's the middle number. Now, I'll prove to you that that is the middle number in just a second here, but I also want to show you something else. So I can go into here. This is a function list. This is the list of all the functions in Sheets. You can literally see all of them if you want to go through all of them. There's quite a lot. I want statistical I want median. So I can go up, I can go look in here for these, for the commands that I want. And it'll just put it in for me, equals median, right? And then I wanted to go B2 to B20, excuse me, B201, like that. Right, and so the median of the second one is apparently 26.045. All right, so let me sort of prove, I mean, I'm sure you probably believe that those are the medians, but let me show you that they do occur right where we're expecting. Remember, I said these are supposed to be the averages of the two middle numbers in this case, because I have 200 data values in each column, and so that's an even number. So there's nothing in the data set itself that is the middle number that has the same amount on either side of it. It's got like the 101st and the 100th and the 101st entry are both on either side of the middle. So I'm going to go find the 100th and 101st entry once you sort them. But of course, these are not sorted yet. So I don't want to go hunting through there, but of course we can sort. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to select column A by clicking on the header and go to data and sort range by column A. Now, sorting the range means like it'll sort the things that you selected. You sort the sheet, what it'll do is it'll keep like this entry here along with this one, and then it'll sort both columns, which is not what we want to do. I just want to sort column A by column A. And A to Z means it'll do small to big, Z to A means it'll be big to small. So if I do this, and notice that it didn't move the header around. If I had not frozen this, it would have moved the header, which is really annoying. It'll put it at the bottom. And notice that we've got all the small ones at the bottom here, and the big ones, or small ones at the top, and the big ones at the bottom. 201. Big ones at the bottom here, so this is the biggest one. And so if I want to find the median, I should go average the numbers between, or the average the numbers in cell 100 and 101, right? Because the first 100 and the first 100 is 1 through 100, and the last 100 is 101 through 200. And so the breakpoint between those is between 100 and 101. So if I average 27.48 and 27.48, it should give me 27.48. I hope that is what the median is. 27.6072. That's the mean. Median 27.515. Did I do this wrong? A201. I don't know what's going on here. That's what the median is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the average of the two middle numbers. What the heck? I guess I'll start over. Why did... Oh, pardon me. I apologize. I was just going to start the video over, and I just realized it's not going 1 to 200. It's going 2 to 201. So the first 100, the 100th entry is in the 101st place. So I apologize. It should be 101 and 102 that I'm looking between here. Sorry about that. So the average of 27.48 and 27.55. That's 27.515. Good. We're all good here. And if we looked in B, we'd see the same thing, right? So if I go to select B, data, sort range by column B, A through Z, there's a go small to big. Again, I can do that. I could sort the other way too. No, don't sort the sheet. There we go. Sort the range by column B, Z through A, and we've got the big ones at the top. So just like we said. So there's mean and median. It'll do the mode as well. This is quantitative data, so it really, there's no point, but I'll show you how to do it anyway. Right, just take it's more practice equals mode A2 to A201. Tells me what the most common entry is, 22.88 apparently. So if we look at 22.88, there's two of them. So no more than two of any one appear here. Now, the reason I don't care about mode for quantitative data, when we're thinking about quantitative data, there's things like measurement error. So for instance, let's say that 22.87, like one of these trees wasn't actually 22.88 feet tall, it was 22.87 feet tall. There was slight measurement error, now it's no longer the mode, right? But that doesn't change the character of the data overall, or even really much about the tree itself, right? If it's 1/100th of a foot difference. So we don't really care about that for quantitative data for that reason, that a very tiny change makes it technically no longer the mode. And so the mode doesn't really tell you very much about a quantitative data set. But we can find it equals mode of B2 to B201. There you go. And that's in this list as well. If you go to statistical, mode is somewhere around here. Where is it? Yeah, most commonly occurring values in the sheet, etc. Once you know the command, it's easier to type it than it is to go find it in the list in general. But you can always just go find it in the list. So mean, median, and mode, those are your measures of center. Mode really is only for qualitative data, not for quantitative. Mean and median we'll use quite a bit. Let me switch back over to here, over to the notes, because I want to make a couple points, and then we'll call it good. So that's how you find the mean, median, and mode in the spreadsheet program. And then here is a data set that we're just going to do this by hand because it's easy. I want to find the mean and median of this data set and talk about what effects that has. So our 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1,000, right? So there's a little cluster around of small numbers and one huge number. So let me go to whiteboard. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1,000. Right, those are my data values. And so if I just kind of put them on a number line, right, so you get a little bit down here and then one way up here. So this is what's known as an outlier, which we will talk about the technical definition of a little bit later. But the way you want to think about an outlier is it is a data value that is significantly different than the other data values, right? It's much different than the other ones. So this 1,000 is much different than the bulk of the data, which is down here. That's going to be relevant in just a second. So the mean, so X bar is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 1,000 over 5. Right, that's how you calculate the average, and that's 1,010 divided by 5, which is 202. The median, which I don't know why, but I don't think it has a symbol. At least I've never seen one. I've seen some people use capital M for median, but it's not standard as far as I know. I'm just going to call it median. Med is the middle number here, right? And so I've got 5 numbers. Pretty clearly, the one in the middle is the 3. If you, by the way, here's a quick formula if you want to find the position of the value where the median is. If n, little n, is the number of data values that you've got, which is in this case 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1,000. That's 5 data values. If I do n plus 1 over 2, so position plus 1 over 2. So that is, in this case, 5 plus 1 over 2, which is 3, right? 6 over 2 is 3. That tells us that the median can be found in the 3rd position once we put the data in order, which it is, right? There's the 3rd position, that's clearly the middle. So yeah, you can calculate the position that you would find the median in. Most of the time, you're going to be finding your median via calculator or computer. But if you want to do it by hand, that's how you do it. N plus 1 over 2, where n is the number of things in your data set. So, so here I've got 2 things that are both, purportedly the quote unquote center of the data set. And those 2 things are wildly different, right? If they're both doing a good job of representing the center of the data set, they should be fairly close together. Now, in our spreadsheet, that was the case, right? Tree A and tree B both have mean and median relatively close to each other, right? Tree A is especially only 0.1 feet off. This one is like I guess about the same, 0.12 feet off, right? So In this case, the mean and the median are kind of close to each other, or very close to each other. And in this case, they are not, right? They are wildly different. The reason is the median is unaffected by outliers. So if you have a couple of data points that are really a lot bigger or really a lot smaller than the bulk of your data, the median doesn't care about that because it's just the middle, right? If I changed this 1,000 to 1,000,000, that wouldn't change the median at all because it's still in the third position and it's still 3. If I change 1,000 to 1,000,000, though, this would be tremendously affected, right? It would be, I don't know, 1,000,010, so 200,002, right? So it goes up by a factor of 1,000, right? And that's just wildly different. So when you have a significant number of outliers or outliers that are much larger or much smaller, like really significant outliers, using the mean doesn't necessarily give you a good sense of what a typical value is, whereas the median tends to. The median kind of ignores the things on the top and bottom and only looks at the middle, right? It only looks at the data in the middle, because that's the only thing it's telling you is what's the middle of your data. So if you have something that is highly skewed or has lots of outliers, you might want to use the median rather than the mean. There's other things that you might do as well, but that's the common first thing to check is, do we have crazy outliers? If you do, then the mean is not so great and the median is a lot better, does a better job of telling you what your typical value is. Most of the rest of the time, though, we end up using the mean, but if you have highly skewed data or data with very significant outliers, you're probably going to want to use the median instead. Let's flip back here. So yeah, that's kind of my answer to this here. And so for mean and median, if we're looking at the income data here, in this case, think about which one you'd want to choose and why. And I'll go ahead and pause for a second, then we'll talk about the answer. So pausing. Okay, so the thing that is typically done with income data and other things having to do with wealth a lot of the time, like home prices or net worth, something like that, is they typically use the median actually, rather than the mean, because of the problem of extreme outliers, right? You can see that even on this chart, median household income was roughly 50,000. They don't even tell you what the average was, right? They just tell you what the median is, because there's a lot of crazy outliers. Like these things, if you'll remember, these bars represent everything over 250,000. So this bar right here includes all the people who made millions or even billions of dollars last year. I don't know if anybody made more than $1 billion, but maybe. So there are some really extreme outliers that drive up the average a lot, right? But that doesn't do a good job of telling you what the typical American made in 2010, right? What the typical American made was about $50,000, or typical, I guess, working age American, or household income, excuse me. Typical household income was in 2010 was about $50,000. If you reported the average, I actually don't know what the average would be, but it would be much higher than this, because there are some of these crazy incomes that are really driving up the average. And that, by the way, is why we say that this is skewed to the right or skewed high, because the outliers and the extreme values here are skewing the average. They are pulling the average to the right. But they're not pulling the median, because the median is unaffected by outliers. So in the case of data where you have very significant outliers, you typically want to use the median for this reason, because the mean is affected by the very significant outliers and the median is not. And as always, we're not going to use the mode for those. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here. That's all I wanted to say about measures of center. I'm going to come back and talk about quartiles and box plots in the next video. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here.